The moment I stepped through the front door, still wearing my work boots, still carrying the weight of a 12-hour shift on my shoulders, my wife looks up from the kitchen table and says, "I need you to move out by the end of the week." No hello. No how was your day. Just that? Flat? Rehearsed? Delivered like she's been practicing it in the mirror for weeks. I set my keys down slowly. "What did you just say?" Sophia doesn't flinch. She's sitting with her arms crossed, a glass of wine in front of her she hasn't touched, dressed like she just got back from somewhere nice. There's a manila folder on the table. "I already don't like the look of it. You heard me, Marcus." She tilts her head, studying me the way you study something you're about to throw away. "I talked to a lawyer. It's already in motion. I just need you to cooperate so this doesn't get ugly." I laugh, not because anything is funny, but because my brain genuinely cannot process what's happening. We'd had rough patches. Every marriage does. But this morning, she kissed me goodbye when I left for the job site. This morning, everything was fine. "Sophia, we have a son." "I know we have a son." Her voice doesn't waver. "Ethan stays with me. You'll get visitation. Every other weekend, maybe one evening a week, if your schedule allows." She slides the folder toward me. "I had my lawyer draft a preliminary agreement. It's fair." I don't touch the folder. Fair. I repeat the word back to her like it's in a foreign language. "You want me out of my own house by Friday, and you're calling that fair?" She sighs, long and tired, like I'm the one being unreasonable. "It's not your house, Marcus. It's our house. And Ethan needs stability. He needs to stay in the school district, stay in his routine. You can find an apartment close by. I'm not trying to cut you out of his life. You're cutting me out of everything else." She picks up her wine glass finally, takes a slow sip. "I've been unhappy for a long time. You know that." "I didn't know that, actually. I thought we were working through it." "You thought wrong." I stand there in the middle of the kitchen I helped tile with my own hands 3 summers ago, staring at a woman I've been with for 9 years, and I feel the floor shifting under my feet. Not anger yet, just that cold, hollow feeling of something breaking that you can't put back together. "Is there someone else?" I ask. The question hangs in the air between us. She holds my gaze a second too long before she says, "That's not what this is about." That's not a no. I notice that. I file it away. I don't sign anything that week. I call my buddy Derek, who went through his own divorce 2 years ago, and he connects me with a family attorney named Paul. I meet Paul in a downtown office that smells like old coffee and carpet cleaner. He's a heavy-set guy with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and he listens to everything without interrupting. "She wants the house, primary custody, and child support," I summarize. Paul nods. "Standard opening position in a divorce where the wife is primary caregiver. Do you have any reason to contest the custody arrangement?" "I'm there every night. I'm not on a job site. I coach Ethan's soccer team. I take him to his checkups. I'm not an absent father." "Good. We'll document all of that." He scribbles something. "Don't move out of the house, Marcus. Not until the court orders it. You move out voluntarily. It signals to the judge you've already accepted her terms." She said she needs me gone by Friday. She can say whatever she wants. You have legal right to remain in the marital home. Stay put. So, I stay. And Sophia does not make it easy. The first week I sleep on the couch in my own living room while she takes the bedroom. She's coolly polite when Ethan is around and icy silent when he's not. She stops buying groceries she knows I like. She starts bringing work home in the evenings, spreading papers across the kitchen table, making it clear she considers the shared space as hers now. When I try to talk, she answers in one-word responses. When I try to ask about Ethan's schedule, she acts like I'm asking for classified information. Ethan is 7. He's a quiet, serious kid who loves dinosaurs and hates loud noises. He knows something is wrong. Kids always know. He starts sleeping with his bedroom light on again, something he stopped doing 2 years ago. I sit on the edge of his bed one night and he asks me, "Are you and Mom fighting?" "We're going through some grown-up stuff," I tell him. "But nothing that's your fault, okay? And nothing changes how much I love you." He nods like he's thinking it over. Then he says, "Ryan says when grown-ups fight, it usually means someone's moving out." I go still. Who's Ryan? Mom's friend from work. He came to pick her up last Saturday. He drives a black car. I keep my voice steady. I don't think I've met him. Ethan shrugs and asks me to turn his dinosaur nightlight on before I leave. I do it. I kiss him on the forehead. And then I go stand in the hallway for a long moment, thinking about what my son just said, and what my wife didn't say when I asked if there was someone else. The months that follow are a slow erosion. The legal process moves at a pace that makes you feel like you're trying to run through wet concrete. Paul files our response to Sophia's petition, fights for shared custody, pushes back on the property division. In the meantime, I'm still sleeping in my own house, eating dinner alone in the kitchen while Sophia watches TV in the bedroom, living in the bizarre in-between state of a marriage that's technically still alive but already feels like a crime scene. My job takes hits too. I'm a site supervisor for a mid-sized construction firm, which means my phone needs to be on and my head needs to be clear. Neither is true lately. I'm missing calls because I'm on the phone with Paul. I'm distracted during walkthroughs because I'm running worst-case custody scenarios in my head. My foreman, a good guy named Harry, pulls me aside one morning and tells me straight, "The Hendricks project is 3 days behind, Marcus. I need you present." I know. I'm handling something at home. "Handle it faster," he says, not unkindly. I try, but there's only so much mental bandwidth a person has. The breaking point comes on a Thursday in November. Sophia calls me while I'm on the job site, and the second I hear her voice, I know it's not about Ethan's schedule. "My lawyer says you've been dragging this out long enough," she says. The warmth she used to have is completely gone, replaced by this clipped, corporate efficiency. "If you don't sign the agreement by next week, I'm going to file for emergency exclusive possession of the house. The judge will grant it. You'll end up with nothing." I'm not signing a bad deal because you're impatient, Sophia. Call it what you want. A pause. Then, quieter, almost amused. "You know, I thought you'd just roll over." "I really did. You always let things go. That was always your problem, Marcus. You just let things go." I don't say anything. "Sign the papers," she says, "or this gets a lot worse for you." She hangs up. I put my phone in my pocket and stand looking out at the steel skeleton of a building going up against a gray sky, and something shifts in my chest. Not breaking this time. Hardening. The thing that changes everything doesn't come from a lawyer or a court date. It comes from a hospital. It's a Tuesday in January, 6 months after Sophia first dropped that folder on the kitchen table. I'm at work when my phone rings. It's Ethan's school. There's been an accident on the playground. He fell from the climbing structure, hit his head, and they've called an ambulance. I'm in my truck before they finish the sentence. At the hospital, I find Sophia already there, pacing the waiting room in her work clothes. Whatever's broken between us disappears for those first 15 minutes. We're just two parents standing in a fluorescent-lit room, terrified for their kid. The doctor comes out, tells us Ethan has a moderate concussion, a fractured wrist, and he's going to be fine, but they want to keep him overnight for observation. The relief is physical. My knees actually go soft. They let us see him. He's small in the hospital bed, his right arm already in a temporary cast, watching cartoons with the volume low. "I tried to grab the bar, but I missed," he tells us, very seriously, as if he owes us an explanation. "It's okay, bud," I tell him. "You're okay." A few hours later, a nurse pulls Sophia and me aside. I assume it's discharge instructions. It isn't. She's young, maybe early 30s, and she has the look of someone choosing her words very carefully. She explains that during processing they ran some routine blood work. She mentions Ethan's blood type. His type came up as AB, she says. Which is. She glances between us. Unusual given the parental blood types we have on file. "We pulled your records from the family practitioner. Mr. Reeves, you're O positive. Mrs. B. Reeves, you're A positive." The room goes very quiet. "That's not possible for an AB child," she continues softly. "I'm not saying anything definitively. That's not my role. But I did want to make you both aware, and I'd suggest following up with your doctor." Sophia's face goes absolutely white. I look at her. She doesn't look at me. I ask the nurse to repeat the blood type one more time, and she does, and I stand there nodding like I'm being told something reasonable. And inside, I am completely still in the way that only happens when something enormous is falling towards you and you haven't figured out where to run. On the drive home from the hospital, Sophia stays with Ethan. I go to pick up his overnight bag. I don't cry. I don't punch the steering wheel. I just drive and think. AB blood type. 2O or A parents. The genetics don't lie. I call Paul the next morning before 8 a.m. He listens without interrupting, same as always. Get the DNA test, he says. Court-ordered or voluntary with a certified lab. If Ethan isn't your biological son, everything changes. The child support obligation, the fraud angle, potentially criminal exposure for Sophia depending on what she knew and when. She knew, I say. I don't know how I know. I just do. You can't assume that in court. We need evidence. Get the test. The paternity test happens on a gray Wednesday at a sterile office building with beige walls and plastic chairs. Sophia brings Ethan. She's wearing sunglasses inside, which she never does, and she won't look at me directly. When Ethan sees me, his whole face lights up. Dad. And he runs over and crashes into me, and I hold him for a few seconds longer than normal, pressing my face into the top of his hair. Hey, buddy. You feeling better? My wrist still itches under the cast, he reports. That means it's healing. He accepts this with the gravity of a scientist confirming a hypothesis. The cheek swabs take about 3 minutes. Ethan thinks it's funny. I hold his hand. Sophia stands by the wall with her arms crossed and her jaw tight and says nothing. In the hallway afterward, while Ethan is in the bathroom, she comes to stand beside me, not looking at me, looking at the exit. You're making a mistake, she says quietly. I'm asking a question. This is going to blow up everything. Her voice has a new texture I haven't heard before. Not anger. Something closer to fear. Whatever you think you know, Marcus, I don't think anything yet, I say. I'm waiting for the science. She turns and walks toward the bathroom to collect Ethan and doesn't say another word to me. The 2 weeks I wait for the results are the longest of my life. I stay at my parents' place. I finally moved out after the hospital incident. Couldn't stay in that house anymore. My mother makes me dinner every night and doesn't ask questions I can't answer. My father, a man of very few words, pats my shoulder one evening and says, "Whatever it says, you're still the one who showed up." I don't know if he means the hospital or the 7 years of coaching soccer and fixing bikes and sitting through school plays. But it doesn't matter. I understand him. The envelope arrives on a Friday afternoon. I sit at my parents' kitchen table. My mother goes to the other room without being asked. I open it. I read it twice. 0.0% probability of biological paternity. I fold the paper back along its crease. I set it on the table. I look out the window at the bare winter yard for a long time. Ethan is not my biological son. I think about the night he was born, the way he screamed when they put him under the lights, the way I cut the cord with shaking hands, and the nurse laughed and told me I was doing fine. The first time he called me Dad, not because anyone told him to, just because he figured it out on his own and decided that's what I was. 7 years of lunches packed and nightmares chased away and bandages applied and science projects assembled on the kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night. None of that is in the DNA report. I call Paul. She knew, I say again. Then we go after her, he says. In the weeks that follow, Paul and his team start pulling threads, and what comes apart is worse than I expected. Sophia and Ryan, the man with the black car my 7-year-old son mentioned so casually, have been involved since before Ethan was born. Not a recent affair. Not a mistake. A parallel life, running alongside mine for the better part of a decade. But the part that crosses from personal betrayal into something criminal is this. 8 months ago, around the same time Sophia started talking about divorce, she updated the beneficiary on a joint life insurance policy we'd held for years. She removed my name. She added Ryan's. Paul brings in a forensic accountant and finds more. A savings account I didn't know existed. Money transferred out of our joint account in small increments over 18 months, a pattern that, when laid out on a spreadsheet, looks less like a woman planning a divorce and more like a woman systematically dismantling a life before the other person knows it's over. This isn't just paternity fraud, Paul tells me, voice tight with something that might be professional excitement. The insurance beneficiary change, the account transfers. This is financial fraud. We can bring in the DA on the insurance piece. I sit with that information for a day. Then I say, do it. The first court date is about the divorce. Sophia arrives with her attorney, a sharp woman named Claire who has the energy of someone who's never lost. Sophia herself looks different. Thinner. The arrogance I'd gotten so used to seeing is still there, but there's something rattling loose underneath it now. Paul lays out the paternity test results. Claire tries the "she was uncertain about paternity, she acted in good faith" angle. Paul puts the timeline on the table. The affair's start date confirmed by phone records Paul subpoenaed, Ethan's birth date, the years of child support I'd paid, my arrest record. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before the courtroom, there's one more thing. 3 months after Sophia filed for divorce, a temporary child support order came through based on her petition. I was still employed, still paying. But the construction firm had a slow quarter, and I was moved from full-time to project-based work. 2 months later, I missed a payment by 11 days. 11 days. Sophia's lawyer filed a motion immediately. I showed up to a hearing without adequate representation. Paul hadn't come on board yet. I was still using a general practice attorney who didn't specialize in family law, and the judge issued a contempt order. I spent 4 days in the county jail. 4 days for 11 days late on a payment, on support for a child who, as the DNA would later confirm, was not biologically mine. I don't say this to generate sympathy. I say it because those 4 days are the reason I cannot describe what happened in that courtroom later as anything other than justice. Paul enters those 4 days into evidence. He enters the paternity test. He enters the paternity test. He enters the insurance beneficiary change and the account transfers. He calls a digital forensics consultant who testifies to the timeline of the transfers. And then he calls Derek, my buddy Derek, who it turns out knew more than I knew he knew. Derek testifies that at a mutual friend's birthday party 3 years ago, Sophia, a few drinks in, made a comment. Something like, "Ryan's actually Ethan's dad, but Marcus is better at the dad stuff, so..." She'd laughed it off, pivoted to another conversation. Derek had assumed he'd misheard. He hadn't. He just buried it because he didn't know what to do with it. He knew what to do with it now. When the paternity test is formally entered into evidence, I watched Sophia's face from across the room. The careful composure she's maintained all morning develops a crack. Just a small one, around the eyes. Her lawyer leans over and says something to her quietly. Sophia shakes her head once, sharply. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and an expression that has clearly seen everything, studies the documents for a long moment. "Mrs. Reeves," she says, "based on this evidence, the paternity fraud appears deliberate and sustained. The insurance beneficiary modification combined with the financial transfers suggests a pattern of deception that predates the divorce filing by over a year." She pauses. Mr. Reeves was incarcerated for non-payment of support for a child who, by DNA evidence, is not his biological son. He lost wages during that period. He suffered professional and personal consequences. Another pause. This court finds sufficient grounds to vacate the child support order full reimbursement of support paid, and refer the insurance fraud matter to the district attorney's office. Sophia's attorney is on her feet immediately. "Your Honor, my client acted in..." "Your client," the judge says, "will have an opportunity to address the criminal referral separately." Her eyes move to Sophia directly. I'd advise her to take that process very seriously. Ryan, for what it's worth, gets pulled into the DA's referral too. As the beneficiary of a fraudulently modified policy, his involvement becomes part of the financial fraud investigation. He doesn't walk away clean. Nobody gets to walk away clean. Sophia doesn't lose it in the courtroom the way I half expected her to. She goes very still, actually, white and still, like a building after the structure has given out but before it falls. She glances at me once across the room. I don't know what I expected to feel in that moment. Triumph, maybe, or relief. What I feel is tired and sad, and very certain that none of this is what either of us signed up for 9 years ago. The bailiff approaches. Sophia's attorney is asking for a recess. The judge denies it. The process moves forward. I watch my wife, my almost ex-wife, sit in a courtroom and have her carefully constructed version of reality dismantled, piece by piece, in front of a stranger with a gavel. I don't feel like winning. I feel like surviving. Outside the courthouse, Paul shakes my hand and says we did well today, and I nod and thank him, and then I sit in my truck for 20 minutes before I can drive. Custody is the piece I wasn't sure about. Ethan isn't my biological son. The court has that on record. Claire argued, not without logic, that with the fraud findings and Sophia's likely criminal proceedings ahead, and with Ryan having no interest in fatherhood, he doesn't. He never responds to any of the communications his own attorney sends about paternity rights. Custody is a complicated matter. What the court awards me, ultimately, is primary temporary custody. The language the judge uses is established parental relationship, demonstrated commitment, stability of care. What it means is this: I'm the one who showed up. I'm the one Ethan calls dad. And until Sophia resolves her criminal situation and can demonstrate fitness, I'm who he comes home to. He's been staying with my parents through all of this. When I go to pick him up that afternoon, the day of the hearing, the late winter sun cutting low and cold through the bare trees, he's in the backyard throwing a tennis ball against the fence and catching it on the rebound, over and over, the focused repetition of a kid who is working something out in his head. He hears the gate and turns around. Dad. Just that. One syllable. And he comes over, not running, just walking steadily toward me, and I crouch down to his level and he wraps his arms around my neck and I hold on. He smells like my mother's laundry detergent and grass, and a little bit like the hand sanitizer they keep by the back door. He's solid and real, and here. You okay? I ask. Yeah. He pulls back and looks at me with those serious eyes. Grandpa, let me have 2 cookies after dinner. That sounds like Grandpa. Are we going home soon? I breathe in slowly. Yeah, bud. We're going home soon. My mother watches from the kitchen window, and when I look up, she gives me a small nod. She knows what happened today. She's known a lot of things she didn't say for a long time, I think. Parents are like that. That night after Ethan is asleep, he sleeps with the dinosaur nightlight on, still, probably always will. I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I'm not really drinking, and I think about the whole shape of it. 9 years. A son who isn't mine by blood and is mine in every way that has ever mattered. A woman I loved who made choices I'll never fully understand. A version of my life that turned out to be built on a foundation I didn't know was cracked. My mother sits down across from me without asking. What are you going to tell him? She says. When he's older. I wrap both hands around the mug. The truth, that his mom and I had a complicated situation. That DNA is biology and biology is only part of the story. She's quiet for a moment. He's going to ask if you knew. I'll tell him I didn't, and that it wouldn't have changed anything. She reaches across the table and puts her hand over mine for a second. That's all. She doesn't say anything else. She doesn't need to. Months pass. The criminal case against Sophia moves slowly, as these things do. She's charged with insurance fraud and financial misconduct. Her attorney negotiates. The outcome is still pending, but Paul tells me the evidence is solid and the DA is motivated. Brian surfaces briefly through his own lawyer, makes a tentative inquiry about paternity rights, and then goes quiet again. He was never interested in being a father. He was interested in Sophia. Those are 2 completely different things, and Ethan deserves someone who knows the difference. I go back to full-time work in the spring. The Hendrix project wraps on schedule. Terry doesn't bring up my rough patch, and I don't either. I coach Ethan's soccer team again. He scores his first goal in April and runs toward me on the sideline with his arms out like wings, like he's gonna take off, and I catch him and spin him around, and the other parents clap. And somewhere in my chest, something that had been pulled very tight for a very long time, finally lets go. One evening, I'm helping him with a school project about families. He's drawing a diagram, the way kids do. Circles connected by lines. He draws himself in the center. He draws me to the left. He pauses before drawing anything on the right. Dad, he says, not looking up from the page, do you think family is who you're born to or who you choose? I sit with that for a moment. He's 7. He came up with this himself. I think, I say carefully, that it starts with who you're born to. And then life gives you chances to choose. And the ones who choose you back. Those are the ones who matter. He considers this the way he considers most things. Seriously, methodically, the tip of his marker hovering. Then he draws me in the circle to his left, writes DAD in careful capital letters, and moves on to the next part of his diagram. I watch him work, and I think about the nurse in that hospital room with her careful words and the blood type that didn't match, and the envelope I opened at my parents' kitchen table. I think about Derek and his testimony and Paul's spreadsheets and a judge with silver hair who used the word justice like she meant it. I think about all the ways a life can be built on something untrue, and all the ways something true can survive it. Ethan caps his marker and holds up the diagram. Does that look right? I look at the careful circles, the connecting lines, his own name in the center of everything. Yeah, bud, I tell him. That looks exactly right.